Let me call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for January 13th, 2025. Let me start with just a quick overview of our agenda tonight. We will have a little bit of housekeeping with minutes, and because it is our first meeting of the year, we'll have election of officers and some things we need to take care of internally here. And then we have two petitions that have been tabled, that continue to be tabled, SP 24-22, Cutters Kirkwood 123 LLC, and text amendment to the sign standards, ZO 34-23. So those are tabled. The petitions that we will hear tonight are MP 38-24, that's the City of Bloomington request for an amendment to the transportation plan, and Platts 2024-10-0040, Walnut Street Pike Development LLC. This is primary plat approval for a 75-lot subdivision. And then finally, Use 2024-12-0070, Bledsoe Riggert Cooper James. This is a major site plan approval request. So we'll hear those three petitions tonight. But to get us started, let's make sure we have a quorum and call the roll.
Enright Randolph.
Here.
Ballard.
Here.
Burrell. Here. Seabour.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Stossberg.
Here.
Whistler.
Here. Is that it? We got everybody? All right, we do have a quorum. Let's continue. The first thing we have is minutes to be approved. I believe we have minutes from the December 9th meeting, which were distributed via email. Are there any questions or corrections or additions to those minutes? Go ahead.
I have two things. One, I noticed that in the last kind of full paragraph, tenants is spelled wrong, like the N and the T are reversed. So I figured maybe that could get corrected. And then I was also wondering, it said in the beginning of this that no minutes were approved at the December meeting, but that means the November minutes must still be out there somewhere?
Yes, they are still out there, and you will see them next month.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions or corrections? All right. Would someone like to move for approval of those minutes with the one typo correction that was mentioned?
I'll move to approve the minutes with the one typo correction.
Second.
All right. Since we have a remote participant, I think we need to call the roll on this one tonight. Let's go ahead and call the roll on approval of the minutes.
Burrell.
Yes.
Seabour.
Yes.
Kinsey. Smith.
Yes.
Stossberg.
Yes.
Whistler.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to reports, resolutions, and communications. Any reports or resolutions from staff tonight?
Reminder, we have a special session of the Plan Commission on Thursday in this room at 5:30 to respond to a resolution that we received from Common Council related to the affordable housing incentives in Chapter 4 of the UDO. So you will get a packet tomorrow with a draft suggestion response to their resolution. My assumption is that it's likely that you won't finish on Thursday, and we'll continue to the regular February hearing to hear it again. But if you are all in agreement about what you want to do, obviously, of course, you can make that recommendation on Thursday. I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any other reports from commissioners?
Sean has his
Go ahead, Tron.
Yes, thank you, and I'll be brief. Just wanted to give a big thank you to Plan Commission member Chris Cockrum for his role on the county's Plan Commission. We met at an admin meeting, and he said he won't be seeking that reappointment to the County Plan Commission, so I wanted to make sure that we expressed a big thank you. I think it's very important to have some representation from the city at the county and vice versa. And also, I just wanted to make another point that our planning director, Jackie Nestor Jalen, also wanted to extend her appreciation and a thank you for his willingness to serve.
Thank you. Any other reports from commissioners? All right, we'll move on to the election of officers then.
Vote for, if that's okay? All right, at this hearing, we need to elect officers for this board, so that's president and vice president. You also elect from among your membership a member to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The mayor also appoints someone from your membership to the Board of Zoning Appeals, so Tim Ballard is that mayoral appointment. And then you will vote on someone else to be on the BZA and an alternate for that position as well. You vote someone from your membership to the Plat Committee and an alternate for that position. And then as Mr. Enright Randolph said, you vote someone who has a non-voting position on the Monroe County Plan Commission. So those are the ones that you all fill, but you also vote for all Plat Committee members. So those are members of City of Bloomington Utilities, Engineering Department, and then one of your own membership. And then you vote for the hearing officer and their alternate, and alternates for all the Plat Committee members as well. So we got their recommendations from City of Bloomington Utilities and Engineering about who they would like to serve and then be an alternate this year. And then have recommendations for hearing officer when we get to that. But usually we start off with president and vice president for Plan Commission.
All right. Well, let's start with president. Are there any nominations?
I'll move for Brad Whistler to stay on as president. Second that.
I will be happy to do that, but as always, also happy to let someone else have a turn if someone else is eager to have the center seat here. Any other nominations? All right, well, let's call the roll on appointing myself as president.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg,
Yes.
Ballard,
I'll say yes, and that, Brad, you're too hard to replace, so glad you're staying.
Burrell.
Yes.
Did I say Whistler? Yes, Whistler.
Yes. All right, well, thank you, I'm honored. Let's move on to vice president. Are there any nominations for vice president? Jillian Kinsey has served as vice president for a few years. She's not here to defend herself.
I was wondering if we could.
Yeah, let's nominate an absentee. I'm all for that.
I have not, has anyone spoken to her specifically about this?
I did not this year, make
Yeah.
sure everyone was okay. I thought we could do it here, but she did not, I will say she did not tell me that she was not interested.
Right, which means she
she
is.
has been reappointed and was pleased to be reappointed, so.
Yeah,
you can
I'm pretty
take that
sure
for what it is.
she's willing to continue in that role. I think her position has always been kind of the same as mine. She's happy to step aside if there's somebody else that wants a turn, but welcome any nominations. The floor is open. All right. Any other nominations? All right, then, let's call the roll on Jillian Kinsey for vice president.
Okay. Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard.
Yes.
All right, before we move on, just a quick question. Do we need a roll call on all these, or can we do a voice vote on the rest of these? It'll save us quite a bit of time if we can.
I think legal, we usually do roll call votes when we have members on Zoom. We know that's required for a hybrid meeting. But since they're
Well-
all here, can they do a voice vote for election of officers? Yeah. Until Jillian joins on Zoom. So yeah, let's
Oh,
get through
okay, so
them.
we can't do voice vote,
We
yes?
can't do voice vote until.
Until we have a
Oh,
voting
we have
member.
one non-voting member on Zoom.
I'm sorry to make that inconvenience.
That's
but
okay.
I've read
That's all
the electric meeting policy, and they don't really specify for kind of the role I serve at all. So to play it safe, maybe a roll call would be
All right,
appropriate.
we're gonna call very quick rolls as we go on here. All right, next up is Board of Zoning Appeals. Commissioner Burrell has served in that role for us diligently. Would you like to continue? Be willing to continue?
Yes.
All right, someone like to make a nomination?
Second.
All right, any other nominations? Go ahead.
This is not a nomination, but I'm going to propose that maybe we fill these last 1, 2, 3, 4, is that 5 up there? And then just vote on them as one block. Can we do that? Since we have to roll call?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, as long as we don't have multiple nominations for the same spot, then we can do that. Let's continue. All right, BZA alternate, Chris Smith has served there.
Stay as an alternate on both of those. You just want me to? I'm good with both of them. You want me to?
Yeah,
I only got called once last year. Worked out pretty well.
all right. So we'll, go ahead.
Do we need to officially nominate?
No, I
Chris
think what we'll
Smith?
do is just, we'll
Great.
fill these, and then we'll just make one motion and approve them all. So Chris Smith for BZA alternate and Plat Committee alternate. Plat Committee primary has been Jillian. I don't know how she feels about this one.
I'll say she does regularly attend. If we appoint her, my preference would probably be to appoint her, and then if she doesn't want to do it, we'll appoint somebody else next
We'll
month.
have a redo. All right, fair enough. So let's go ahead and slot Jillian there. And then finally, County Plan Commission delegate has been Chris Cockrum. He does not want to continue in that role, so we will need someone else to step up and take that spot. Anyone interested?
And if you'd like, I could give a quick rundown of kind of when they meet. That's helpful. It's the first Tuesday and second Tuesday of the month, the admin meeting, kind of like our luncheon, and then our regular scheduled meeting the second week on a Tuesday at 5:30, if that's helpful. And also, I think it's a great measure to establish some collaboration and serve as a conduit between the two commissions. So if that helps entice anyone.
All right, anyone like
How
to?
about if we, I did talk to Chris about this. Let's put Chris back in the spot as a placeholder today so we can move on. And we get a full committee here, let's talk about it again. We got too many people this. Is that fair?
It's fair to me. It's not, I don't know if it's fair to him.
He said he'd do it if we asked him.
He did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not saying he has to stay.
Sure, sure.
I'm just doing it as a placeholder right now so we can have a bigger discussion about it.
I think that's fair.
Somebody here wants, is going to raise their hand.
Well-
Anybody?
I was hoping that you were going to raise your hand.
I can't do it.
I-
Especially once.
I understand
can't
that.
sit through. Yeah. Even as a-
All right, well, I think, I think that's probably our best path forward at this point. Let's keep Chris Cockrum there for now, and we can revisit that at the next meeting if he objects. All right.
That's fine. We have a motion and a second on the table, so I think we would just amend the motion that we have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who made that, the last motion you did?
Amend the motion to include all people. Board of Zoning Appeals, BZ alternate, Plat Committee, Plat alternate, County Plan Commission alternate person.
Okay, so let me just repeat. The motion is to appoint Flavia Burrell to Board of Zoning Appeals, Chris Smith as the BZA alternate, Jillian Kinsey to the Plat Committee, Chris Smith as the Plat Committee alternate, and Chris Cockrum to the County Plan Commission. Correct? Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we've got motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Whistler,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg.
Yes.
All right. And do you want to walk us through these, Jackie?
Yes, so for Plat Committee is a 3-member committee. The City of Bloomington Utilities would like for Brian Blake to be their appointee this year, and Liz Carter will be the alternate. Engineering fills one of those roles currently, and that will be Kendall Knoke, and then Roy Ayton as the alternate. And then this body has to appoint a member, which was previously Jillian Kinsey with Chris Smith as the alternate. And then the last one is that you appoint a hearing officer and a hearing officer alternate from the Planning and Transportation staff, and those would remain the same. Our recommendation is to remain the same, Ryan Roebling and Karina Passos.
And can we do all those in a single motion?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, would somebody like to make such a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You have to pick who from you is going to be on the Plat Committee first. But would you like for Jillian and Chris to?
Yeah, we just did that. I think we had Jillian and Chris. Yeah, we've already approved
Oh, I'm
that.
sorry. Okay.
Yep, we had that one twice. Okay, so Commissioner Smith, you've moved to approve as is shown on the screen here. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, let's call the roll on these final appointments.
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg,
Yes.
Whistler.
Yes.
Okay, the last thing I wanted to point out is that some years we've voted, the MPO representative from the Plan Commission is by statute, or at least local code, the president, but the president can send a proxy. We used to have you vote on that, but you don't actually have to. So Mr. Whistler will work that out with whoever that may be. Usually it has been Jillian the last few years. And then also there's a BUEA position that does come from your body, but that is appointed by the mayor, so one of you may be contacted about that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we can hold off on the MPO until Jillian is back and can confirm that she wants to continue in that role. All right. Well, thank you all for your patience with that. And let's move on to our petitions for the evening. We will start with MP 38-24. This is the City of Bloomington's request for amendment to the transportation plan to incorporate safe streets and roads for all. And we have Ryan Roebling, the case manager, to present. Welcome, Ryan.
Services Manager. You will recall that MP 3824 was presented last October, and then again in November, came through kind of wonkily. So we knew amendments were coming, and this is the amendments coming back. So the Common Council made 2 amendments. The first was to adopt the version you saw in November, which updated it from the October version. And the second amendment was a handful of typo fixes and some clarification changes. You can see those in the packet. Actually, I should have joined the Zoom. Let's see. All right, there we go. So you can see them in the red line portion of the document included in the packet. All that to say is because it's an amendment to the comprehensive plan that was amended by Common Council, has to come back to Plan Commission for you all to approve. So with all of that being said, staff recommends that Plan Commission adopt the amendments to the Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Action Plan as adopted by Common Council. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners? Any questions? Last call for questions. All right. We will move on then to public comment. If you're here in the chambers and you'd like to comment, just make your way up to the podium, state your name for the record. You'll have up to 5 minutes to make your comments. If you're online and you want to make a comment, just click the reactions button and click on the raise hand, or send a chat message to Jackie Scanlon, and we'll recognize you when it is your turn to speak. Is there any public comment on MP 3824?
Nothing on Zoom.
Last call for public comment. All right, seeing none, we're back to the commission for any final comments or for a motion.
I have comments.
Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Make them.
Yep, go ahead.
As a civil engineer, I believe in safe streets, also used complete streets is the language we used to use. But this document has lots of comments on social equity, and that got me thinking long and hard, and I've actually had time to read it. When this was thrown at us in October, we were given about 30 seconds to approve this thing, and I voted no at that time simply for that reason. Now I've had a chance to read it, and so I'm going to give some feedback on it. Safe Streets for All is 60 pages plus an appendix. The main body of it, in discussing social equity and things like that, only mentions housing through the concept of land use one time. PPGS 5 states, revise land use and zoning standards to support transportation safety. There's 3 bullet points under it. Promote redevelopment and new development that encourages slow vehicle speeds, mode shift to non-personal vehicle transportation, and funds adjacent transportation safety projects. Second one is utilize development opportunities to meet other goals such as filling in sidewalk gaps, intersection improvements, and road diets. Third one is utilize proactive land use planning such as small area plans to inform potential developers of future land use intent. Not one discussion about compact urban form in the urbanized areas. Not one discussion about housing. There are 7 studies mentioned in this plan. The Bloomington, Indiana Urban Forest Assessment is 61 pages long. It's discussed. City of Bloomington 2022 Future on Policing Task Force initial report, 6 pages included in this report. City of Bloomington 2020 Climate Action Plan, 162 pages. It's an interesting one, included in this plan. City of Bloomington 2020 Plan to Advance Racial Equity, 3 pages. City of Bloomington 2019 Divided Community Project Report. Access was denied. They wouldn't let me read it. City of Bloomington 2019 Transportation Plan, 207 pages. This is an amendment to that. City of Bloomington 2018 Comprehensive Plan, 128 pages. What's not mentioned? 457 pages of our Unified Development Ordinance, which directly impacts equity and housing in our society, in our community. Not even mentioned once. Only one reference to housing in the main document. The best read in this whole document is Appendix A, which is what we're adding today. Safe Streets for All Equity Framework. Starting out reading, Appendix A is added as a reference for intentional and unintentional acts of racism and systematic discrimination in the city and university. This is a great read as the history of planning and zoning in our country. It's not really relevant to Bloomington, but it's about our country, and it directly impacts our UDO in describing the foundation of exclusionary zoning, which is what this is. And it specifically acknowledged the role of discriminatory practice, policies and practices in infrastructure, and this is where it mentions housing and land use, law enforcement, and climate resilience that have created inequitable transportation access. Our Unified Development Ordinance is well-written to hide that its underlying purpose is exclusionary zoning. 457 pages, not mentioned once in this document. In addition, our city leaders have used the Historic Preservation Commission as a planning tool for protectionism. Blanket historic overlays are not preservation. They're lazy. You identify housing and buildings that need to be saved. I've been on 3 historic preservation projects. They're very important. But their exclusionary zoning have played a role parallel in the UDO to driving up housing costs. As a civil engineer that believes in complete streets, I agree we need safe streets. I have children. I'm worried about Bloomington's built environment. I'm worried about climate change, but I'm also worried about our national debt. This plan was required for us to get federal funding for projects that may or may not be needed. Why can't we do a study on how to get the federal government to stop spending borrowed money and give my kids a chance? All of these reports are founded with good cause, but they don't address one huge problem: the lack of compact urban form and more density in our urbanized area. This plan calls for $95.1 million in earmarked spending over the next 2 years. I'd rather have a committee to build up the housing trust fund that's here to support workforce housing through a shared equity program. I think that would go much further in creating social equity, which is what this document seems to discuss but doesn't really address. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or a motion?
Well, I also appreciate like all the hard work and the individuals who put all this together. I stand behind what Commissioner Smith just shared. I think those are very valid points. I think they're very much should be discussed, dissected, talked about. Being in the real estate industry, as 3 out of 6 of us are sitting up here, we can speak to it very, very well. Chris probably as well as anybody. So I just would say, yeah, very valid points in what he said, and I'm supportive of it being said. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or a motion?
I'll move for approval because I like Appendix A.
I'll second, thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second for approval of MP 3824. Can we please call the roll?
Seaboard,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. We will now move on to our second petition, Plat 2024-10-0040, Walnut Street Pike Development LLC. I believe Eric Grulich is the case manager here to present.
Thank you very much. Eric Grulich, Senior Zoning Planner. So this is a request from Walnut Pike Development LLC for a property at 3111 South Walnut Street Pike. The petitioners are here tonight to request primary plat approval for a 75-lot subdivision of approximately 15.56 acres for a common area development plat in the residential medium lot zoning district. So the petitioners are also requesting a waiver from one of the standards within the common area development section of the UDO that requires lot lines to not extend more than 10 feet from any structure, and also requesting a waiver to allow for a cul-de-sac and to request for secondary plat approval to be delegated to staff. So a common area development is not something that the Planning Commission is used to seeing. It has been in the UDO for a long time. There are many examples of it throughout the community, lots of situations where properties have been developed where you own a building and then a limited amount of land outside of that building. So the rest of it is all owned in common area. In fact, just to the south of this, there are a couple examples in the Meadow Ridge development where it promotes very small private ownership of land. The rest of it is owned in common area and maintained in common area. And so it's kind of a mix between, single-family ownership, but then also low maintenance responsibilities for the amount of land that you have to maintain there. So as I mentioned, just to the south of this, you've got some examples of that in Pepper Ridge, or Meadow Ridge, I'm sorry, where you own just a little bit of land outside the building. In fact, the UDO says that lot lines don't extend more than 10 feet from the building. So that's one of the standards that they're requesting a waiver from, because in the R2 zoning district, the minimum front building setback is 15 feet. So there is a kind of a conflict there. So the petitioners are requesting a waiver from that 10 feet to allow for the 15-foot setback that the zoning district-based standards would allow, but the rest of the lot lines have been shown to be 10 feet, except for 2 lots, and I'll kind of step through those in a minute. The property as a whole, though, if you look at the aerial photograph, has largely been undeveloped. There are 2 single-family houses up along Walnut Street Pike. The rest of it is pretty much a forested area. There are a couple of sinkholes that are located within this property as well. Just to the east of this, you have a single family, to the north and east, you have a single family subdivision. So on the east side of this property, and this will come into discussion in just a little bit in regards to access, you can see all the single family lots that abut the east side of this property. So there were no road stubs provided with the adjacent developments to the north or to the east or to the south as well. So shown here is the conditions, the contour map. The dark circles represent some of the sinkholes that are on the property. And then, as I mentioned, there's a lot of trees along the north side and then in the center portion of the property as well. So this was last heard at the November Planning Commission meeting. And so at that time, the Planning Commission saw the site plan that you see in front of you now. And there were a couple of comments that were given from the Planning Commission regarding this site plan. Mostly some of those were largely centered around the requirement for 3-point turns to be required within this development. And so that was a result of having a lack of connections to adjacent roads to develop. So the petitioner had shown a hammerhead design on the east end of the site in order to provide a full road stub to the south. While that was advantageous, certainly for connectivity, it didn't solve problems of everybody that is entering here would have to do a 3-point turn to turn around. There are no driveways that are being proposed with this development. All of the parking would be provided through on-street parking. So because this is a very unique type of petition where there are no driveways and all of the parking is being provided through on-street parking and the lack of connectivity, given the layout that was previously shown, as I mentioned, 3-point turns were required everywhere within the development. So the Planning Commission gave some comments about that and some concerns. The petitioner at that time was also still working through locations for refuse and recycling containers so that Sanitation and Public Works can adequately serve this area. And then so they also made some other modifications to include some common area buildings, a gazebo, pickleball court, and then an amenity center. Given some of those comments, the petitioner changed the overall layout to go back to a cul-de-sac. So initially, when this was heard in 22, there was a cul-de-sac waiver that was approved for that development. It was all single-family lots. As I mentioned, the petitioner had shown a hammerhead design to promote connectivity to the south, but given the lack of ability to make turnarounds safely within the development, the petitioner decided to go back to a cul-de-sac arrangement to allow for turning movements to happen within the development without requiring 3-point turns everywhere. And so in essence, the overall site plan has more or less stayed the same, and they've just changed the east end of the site to allow for a cul-de-sac. They do have 5 of the lots that are shown with driveways in order to have parking directly off of the cul-de-sac out of the right-of-way on those lots, but those would be the only lots within the development that would be served by driveways. So within the center of the cul-de-sac, they've shown a green space that would have 2 trees in it, but that would be kind of just a central feature there. The rest of the development has all on-street parking. The petitioner has shown some ADA accessible parking as well. Those spaces do need to be modified slightly to meet PROAG requirements and have an access aisle next to that. So we have a condition of approval that we've added just to ensure that that element is incorporated. They did also slightly change the on-street parking arrangement that was shown on the north half of the site. That was another area that was kind of still in flux at the last meeting. So they striped the last few spaces there to give a turnaround area within that area. And at a time that this road gets extended, those would just turn into regular on-street parking areas. So stormwater detention for this would be provided in the southwest corner of the site. So the subdivision standards require 50% open space. So this would be meeting that by providing 60%. They've placed all of the karst features within karst preservation easements, as well as met all of the tree preservation requirements and placed those within easements as well. There are a couple of areas on the site adjacent to the karst features where drainage easements have been shown that somewhat overlap that karst feature easement. And so we have to work through that element a little bit. We received some comments just today from CBU regarding that overlap that needs some clarification. So we'll work through that with the secondary plat. All of the internal streets would be public. They'd be dedicated in 61 feet of right-of-way with street trees and tree plot, 6-foot sidewalks. A 10-foot sidewalk is required along Walnut Street Pike, and that has been shown. And then, as I mentioned, the road stub is shown to the north. The petitioners have also shown right-of-way extending to the east property line, where I mentioned this stubs into existing single-family residences. We certainly recognize the challenges of possibly extending a road through those residential lots in the future. However, they are showing right-of-way dedication to the property line should an opportunity present itself in the future. That connection could occur there. So the elevations and floor plans have stayed the same. In essence, these are all 2-bedroom houses. So this has been arranged so that the house will straddle the property line. So each unit will sit on one side of the line. You'll own property about 10 feet outside of the form of the building. And they've included elevations as well. So the petitioner, I'm sure, will be speaking to this a little bit. So these would be prefabbed houses that would be brought to the site and then assembled here. And so that helps promote more feasibility and financial reduction in terms of the cost to get into these. So this is a very unique development. And certainly I think something that we would like to see a little bit more of, as it makes great use of infill development opportunities. It's adjacent to public roads and services, provides a lot of housing units while still promoting some owner occupancy potential, and is certainly something that the UDO wants to try to encourage in terms of diversity of land use and housing types. So with this, as I mentioned, they are requesting a waiver to allow for the front yard for the building to be 15 foot back from the property line rather than 10 foot. Again, that was just to match the standard of the R2 zoning district, which requires the 15 foot. There are 4 lots where there are some stormwater lines that have to run between 2 of the buildings that necessitate the lots or the buildings be a little bit further back than the 10 foot. So that is just for 2 areas somewhat adjacent to the karst features to allow for stormwater infrastructure to move through that area. So that was one of the waivers to allow for the property line to be more than 10 feet. The request for the cul-de-sac is something that we discussed in 2022, but again was something that was necessitated by the lack of options to connect to on adjacent properties. So while the petitioner did explore a different possibility for a road design internal that would give a road stub to the south, that presented a different challenge in terms of inner movement for vehicles, and as I said, required 3-point turns for everybody moving through this development, which was certainly very problematic for the people that would be living there. So while certainly we do not want to see cul-de-sacs as it does not promote connectivity, given the lack of area to connect to around here, the cul-de-sac unfortunately is kind of the best solution here to solve a wide range of problems. And as I mentioned, they did show the right-of-way dedication all the way to the east property line should there be a possible future connection opportunity that might present itself here. So the petitioner has also requested to delegate secondary plat approval to staff. We did get some comments today from CBU that were in relation to some of the easements and some overlap that we feel like we still need to kind of work through a little bit. And so we do feel that it would probably be best appropriate to have a secondary plat delegated to the plat committee rather than staff level. So we are recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the proposed findings with the 5 conditions that are listed in staff's report, with a modification that I listed on the screen here in regards to the secondary plat being delegated to the plat committee instead, and then a sixth condition that the on-street ADA parking shall be designed to be consistent with PROAG standards, which do require a 5-foot access aisle adjacent to those parking spaces. So with that, as I mentioned, we are recommending approval with the 6 conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a representative of the petitioner who'd like to present this evening?
Whistler. I'm Angela Parker. I am counsel for the petitioner. A couple of comments, but I'd like to first introduce the team that's here as a part of this development. Of course, Andy Knust, you've seen from Bledsoe, Riggert, Cooper, and James, who is our engineer on the project, along with Dan Newbecker, who's not here tonight, but has been very involved in that. And then we have pretty much a row full of folks who are involved in this development. I just want to introduce them. Some of them may end up speaking depending on the questions that are raised tonight. Cody Bledsoe, who's project management, Kirby Laux, director of construction, Cyrus Keck, vice president of operations and strategy, Jason Patterson, who's an operations manager, and Eli Marshall, who is president. So they're all here. We're excited about this project, and I want to say a couple of things about our work with the planning department. Appreciate it very much, Eric and his group, on how they've helped us work through some different variations on how we can best get this project done. As you know, it's been tried, retried, and I think this may be the fourth round of looking at how can we effectively develop this site. A couple of things that I wanted to remind you of that we talked about when we were here in November. One of the exciting features of this project is that it's developed specifically to meet a housing need that's not being met in our community. And our petitioner statement outlines a lot of studies and factors about the 55 and over housing need. The housing studies that have been done locally also underscore the need for this segment of housing, including attainable housing for people and affordability. And so the developer is very committed to that concept. They're not requesting development incentives for this project, but have still pledged to create at least 10% of these units as affordable. And so we're targeting a very specific population of our community who we think are having difficulty, and the numbers are going up. And that's all in the petitioner statement. I'm not going to read it to you again. We talked about it last time, but it very clearly is an area of need. So the goal with this project is to create a community, a neighborhood, and that's why we've added a 1,200 square foot amenity center at the front of the development, which also can serve as an area for delivery and mail delivery and that sort of thing, which was an issue that was brought up at the last meeting as well. But to create a community for this population specifically that would be managed through a homeowners association. So the lots would be capable of owner occupancy, as Eric pointed out, but also could be leased and managed depending on what people's particular needs are in that housing segment. So the actually living units are going to be constructed in a controlled environment through one of the entities and companies that is owned by this developer, and they can talk way more about it than I can, but I think they have 4,000 units that they've put up, many of them affordable in different communities around the state. And so these units are paired, but they're separated from foundation to roof by these specially designed air gaps and rubber gaskets that really help create some fire and sound barriers between living spaces. They're small. They're 868 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but they're small with an open floor plan. And we provided some renderings for you so that you could get a little better view of what those might look like as built with mature trees and some things like that. So we're here to answer questions. I don't want to get into a lot of the detail. You've already heard about it. Eric, of course, did his usual great job of presenting to you what we're trying to do. I just wanted to add a little bit of color to that. But we would reserve our time for any questions that you have about the project, about the plans. We are in agreement with planning's conditions as they've been stated tonight, so we're willing to accept that and work this through with planning and the Plat Committee to get this project moving. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we are now to the commission for any questions for either staff or for the petitioner. Any questions? Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Clarification question. You mentioned that lots 39 through 44 have driveways. The site plan shows lots 45 through 48 also. Am I reading that wrong? Or is that just a clarification we need to make?
Yeah, no, the site plan is right. There are 2 lots on the south side that do have a driveway. I just didn't reference.
Well, arguably 4 lots, 2 buildings, 4 lots. There's 10 lots total with driveways. 6 on the north side of the cul-de-sac, 4 on the south. 5 buildings. Yay or nay?
Yes, so there are 5 lots total that would have driveway. I'm sorry,
Well-
10 lots.
10 lots, yeah, 10 lots, 5 buildings.
Yes.
Yeah, we're on the same page, okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that the cul-de-sac has driveways. Just clarification.
Said 868 square feet. Do you have a price? And I know this is just, ballpark spitballing numbers, but a price per square foot and/or price per unit, and how you've come to.
I'm going to ask Eli Marshall, who's president, to speak to those questions, both from a rental standpoint and also potential sale.
Yep.
Yep. We're still working through those numbers right now. Number one, thank you guys for having us here. This is genuinely a passion of ours. We've got about 4,600 units that we manage right now, one being right across the street at College Square. We acquired that apartment complex in, I think, 2019 or something like that, and put some millions into that and have turned that one around. But this one here, we ran a market study, and we're around the 1,600 per month range.
And then sale price, just ballpark me a price per square foot.
It don't really have a for sale price because so far what we've done is we're thinking that we're going to own this entire complex with the HOA, and we will manage that. So we'll cross-utilize our management services from across the street and make sure that we're managing this and the HOA as well.
I mean, 200 a square foot's still under $200,000. So $200 a square foot at 868 square feet.
Yes.
Still under 200. So I'm saying if you're bringing product to this market that's anything under 300.
Yes, yeah, okay, I understand what your question, yeah. 250, 260, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
For brand new. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Stossberg.
I have a couple questions. Why don't you stay at the mic for just a second, because the first one actually relates to what you just talked about in terms of pricing. Because
Sure.
in your letter, you also mentioned that commitment to have some affordable units, and you said in your thing below 100% of AMI. So that $1,600 a month range, is that for all your units?
No,
Are you
no,
gonna?
that would be the top side.
Okay, so that would
Yep.
be the top side of
Correct.
like maybe the ones with driveways, which might be considered.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking. We'd probably be able to get a
Okay.
little bit more out of those.
Okay, and then in terms of that AMI price, you would just keep it at whatever, like the hand department, like
You got it.
declares in terms of, great, okay.
got it. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. I have questions about the cul-de-sac too, if I. Okay, so this is probably a question for staff in terms of the cul-de-sac sizing and just kind of verifying that you've checked with sanitation and with emergency response to make sure that that cul-de-sac, because it looks, honestly, it's like, it looks more like roundabout. To me, so that space is big enough for the sanitation trucks and also the emergency vehicles.
Yes, so the petitioner has given us a turning exhibit showing sanitation trucks as well as fire department trucks that can do that turnaround within the cul-de-sac. And then there was also the expressed desire that it be made of concrete to help withstand those hard turning movements around that circle. Certainly the petitioner's engineer can testify a little bit more to the design of that.
Okay. And then the second thing is it really does seem like it is acting a little bit more like a roundabout as opposed to a cul-de-sac in terms of the traditional cul-de-sac. And I'm noticing that like directly like on the east side, there is a gap there where there's not any structure. So could it, in theory, be possible, this may be a question for the engineer, to at some point, if it's possible, to actually have a road connection over to the east, like if one of those houses or two of those houses were not there, that those two neighborhoods could connect?
Yes. Andy Canoes, engineer for Bledsoe Riggert Cooper James. And yes, that is the intent of the design for the cul-de-sac. It is a cul-de-sac now, but in the future possible event that that on the other side of the property there, street connection could be made, then it would effectively become more like a roundabout.
Okay, great. I'm glad that that has been thought of. Thank you. I have other questions, but I'll wait and give other
With, I guess,
commissioners
the
a chance.
exception that, there will just be, really be like a through street with a roundabout in it.
We have other streets in Bloomington that are like through streets with roundabouts in the middle of the intersections, and they actually provide nice traffic slowing. I actually had to go down one of those the other day, and they are quite effective.
Question. As I was looking at the plat where the cul-de-sac is, the driveways, I know we're not necessarily approving the site plan and the driveways, but they look like they're two driveways right next to each other that would exceed what I imagine the UDO driveway width. I guess just to talk through driveway design, or if that would be a detail worked through as things move forward. I don't know if this is for staff or engineer.
Yep, so the UDO limits driveway width to 18 feet. On local streets, there is not a setback requirement from one single-family driveway to another. So, what is shown is allowed by the UDO.
So two 18-foot driveways right next to each other, so it's essentially a 36-foot.
Yeah, so they actually have a little bit of separation, I think, but, oh, sorry. Yep, so what they've got here at the very end is the property line straddles that driveway, so on each side of the line, it's 18 feet and 18 feet. So there's not a setback requirement from another drive or from a property line in single-family residences on a local street like this.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, and it kind of matches the format of the housing where they're, the housing units are conjoined and the driveways are likewise conjoined.
Any other questions? I think you're up again.
Oh, I have so many. So it just snowed, and so of course I'm reading this after snow, and I'm thinking about plowing, because with all of the street parking, and this is being targeted toward those 55 and up, who I have heard from multiple ways, they shoveling can be a challenge, and I'm assuming the city of Bloomington is responsible for plowing. So I think that there needs to be some kind of a plan for how to do that, because otherwise, with all of the street parking and very little space, like empty space in there to like push snow,
Yeah, so
this
that's
just looks like a nightmare to me after hearing and receiving different
Yeah, I
feedback
can't,
about that.
begin to, obviously there are lots of cul-de-sacs within the city where, plowing is handled. I cannot testify to what sanitation does in those situations in terms of where is the area that snow is just pushed to. Yeah, so I can't answer that question. The streets have, in terms of the width, there are two 10-foot travel lanes, so you've got 20 feet there in order for plows to move through. I don't know if on the site plan they would just find kind of a dead space at the end for the snow to go. That's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that one.
Yeah, I guess I want to encourage the developers and the owners right now to have a plan for that, because when the plow comes through, it's like everybody parked along the street is then going to be plowed in to some degree. And, with this population, they're not just going to be able to get out there, send their teenage kids out there to shovel for them. And if the whole neighborhood is like that, that's just going to be something.
I would hazard a guess here that it would probably just go at the very end here where that right-of-way stub is kind of shown. That would be outside of the road movement area, and so that would probably be the area, I guess.
Yeah, there's
Like I
just.
said, I can't
Yeah,
say.
the city plows, like, it's inevitable, they're gonna drop snow all along the cars though, and then people aren't gonna be able to get their cars out,
It's
so.
too bad we had Snowmageddon right before our meeting, huh? Also, just wanted to remind you that we also will have an HOA that will be managing this and working with the residents. And I think for this development particularly, and the management that will be in place, that will be an important ingredient in how to navigate. I mean, we don't get a lot of snow, but apparently this year we got a lot all of a sudden. And so it's hit or miss about what that's going to look like, as well as any other management issues that come up. But I think the advantage of this community is that it will be a community with HOA management.
Wonderful, thank you. I have more too. I think I just have one more though, maybe two more. So if these are prefab structures, I guess my question is what kind of local labor is going to be needed or are you going to utilize in terms of construction?
I'm going to let Mr. Marshall deal with that.
So we actually own Volumod, which is the plant where these will actually be built in Indianapolis. We'll handle the transport here, and then we will be the general contractor who will subcontract out all of the site work. Some will be local labor force, some will be current contractors that we use on other developments.
Great, thanks. And then the last thing is a staff thing. When you showed up the 6th condition on the screen, which is not in our packet, it was underneath the subtitles of Zoom and I couldn't actually read it. So if there was a way to show that on the screen and like scroll up so that it wasn't hiding underneath that text, it would be super helpful to me, thanks. And then I'm done.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? All right. Well, then I think it is time for public comment. Let's go to public comment. Once again, if you're here in the chambers, just step up to the podium, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to make comment. If you are joining us via Zoom, you can just look for that reactions button, click that, and click on the raise hand, or send a chat message to Jackie Scanlon, and we'll recognize you when it is your turn to speak.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Ben Ramsden, and I am a neighbour of the development. And I just have a couple of quick questions and sort of comments, so I'll try and be very brief. And I'd like to refer to page 177 of the petition, perhaps if that can be shown, if possible. In particular, I want to just draw a little attention to the stub road, which runs north from the main street in the development and seems to now support parking for the development, which I think is a good idea. One thing I was just a bit concerned about is that cars exiting from the stub road seem to definitely need to make a three-point turn to make some sort of exit in the end. And the full road width appears to be, on my calculations, at least 34 feet. I'm just a bit concerned because my internet perusal suggests large cars could perhaps need more road width to actually execute a three-point turn. And so I was just kind of wondering with the staff and perhaps with the engineers of the petition, what guidelines or standards are we to use to ensure that typical vehicles will be able to practically and safely turn in the stub road? And then secondly, could the stub design allow a wider road width at the terminal end of the stub road to just allow more turning width somehow? I'm not sure whether that's possible. And finally, would it be possible to consider right angle parking along only one side of the stub in order to make more of a practical design? I'm particularly thinking of people like me who are over 55 and can sometimes, you need to make a three-point turn if you've got an arthritic shoulder, etc. You want to make it as easy as possible. And in my mind at least, perhaps right angle parking in this case might just be easier to pull in and then back out of and come back out rather than trying to execute a more complex three-point turn with the street layout as it is at the end of the stub road. So those are my 3 points that I wanted to make, or questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
there any other public comment?
Hi, my name's Ina Puce. I'm a neighbour as well. And I just wanted to just make a comment about the Snowmageddon. It's not unusual in Bloomington for us to have a dump of snow. And so I would really urge the developers to really seriously think about the snow removal problem, because whether or not we like it, climate change is here, and that means not necessarily less snow. It'll mean more extremes of weather. And so this snowstorm or two that we've had now is not unusual. And if we have a real dump, which we've had in the past, and we've only closed IU once during the time I've been here since 2008, and that was about 2 feet of snow. Just, think a little bit about that, because I feel for these folks over 55.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Do we have any online comment?
Nothing on Zoom.
All right, last call for public comment on DP 44-24. All right, we are then back to the commission for any final questions or comments or motion. Commissioner Seymour.
Somebody maybe from the petitioner's team could just speak to the ability to turn around, and I think there's some hashed out parking spaces maybe that relate to that question. But just to address the question that came up, and is what might be at the end of the stub road too, just to make sure to keep traffic from going beyond the property. If you could just speak a little bit to that.
To engineer with Bledsoe Riggert Cooper Dame. I'm not sure if I have to say my name again, but anyway. Yes, parallel parking is really the standard that the transportation plan and the UDO provides for in this kind of circumstance. I think that actually perpendicular parking where you would back out into the public right-of-way is not allowed, or it might be allowed with certain conditions. It would be sort of an unusual thing to do in this kind of circumstance, because really the purpose of that stub street is to provide for a future street connection. It's not, the real purpose of it is not so much for parking, although that is like the secondary use for this stub street in this case where, there's not currently a connection further to the north. So it's being used for parking sort of a temporary condition, really is the idea of it. We have a consistent right-of-way width there, and in order to maintain a consistent right-of-way width, we can't, make it wider at the end and provide, a hammerhead just for that turnaround purpose, because otherwise, when the street eventually does get extended to the north, there would be this odd, situation where the future developer might have to do some rework to make it consistent with, a good street design. So that's the reason that the design looks the way it does, is that it's really, meant to be a consistent street design. Now, I think there is adequate room for typical passenger vehicles to turn around in the width that's provided, and delivery trucks and so forth, I wouldn't expect them to be delivering up there, because there's no residence up in that stub street. So I think in a rare circumstance when there are larger vehicles going up there, it may be a challenge to turn around, but they can do it.
That's helpful, and I think just I imagine those northern two future parking spaces are hatched out just to create additional space to turn around at the end, and if the road were to connect in the future, that would change and just become our parallel spaces.
Yes.
Great, and I imagine there'd be typically a sign or barricade at the end of this road that would just keep people from going outside. Is that fair?
Yes, we could certainly put, actually, I think on the plan,
Looks like
I think
there's a
there
couple
are
little
actually
dots.
some reflective signs at the end of the street
Yeah.
that aren't labeled as such on this plan, but that's the intent, yes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? No?
We got Tron on Zoom has his hand up as well.
Go ahead, Tron.
Yeah, and this might just be a short and sweet answer, but with lot 20, it's just kind of busy. I think if you could bring that up, that'll help. I'm trying to understand what is going on with lot 20. Some of it's the no build easement, maybe. And I'll wait until that you bring that up. I think I'm on page 176. Yeah, I think that'll show it. And yeah, just that line right there, is that a drainage easement, a no build easement? Basically, is that going to just be part of lot 20 and have to kind of do the site plan around it? I just can't distinguish exactly what that kind of second outline is referring to on this plat.
On the east side, sorry, on the east side of lot 20, there is a drainage easement.
Okay.
We've placed a storm inlet to capture what, if there's overflow or spill coming out of that karst feature there, then there's an inlet placed right at the edge of the karst easement to capture that drainage. And per CBU guidelines, we've got a 20-foot drainage easement around that storm line.
And I guess my question was the west of that.
To the west of lot 20?
Yeah, if you zoom in just a little bit more on lot 20, you see that gray line goes into the lot. And I was just kind of curious what that was. And it might just be something with the plat and not anything significant to the development itself. Do you see what I'm referring to? You have your conservancy area, and it looks like a little buffer, and that's kind of that way on all of the plat, or on all the conservancy area, but I'm just kind of curious, it kind of goes within lot 20. There you go, you kind of can see it now.
Oh, those are contour lines, I think. The
Okay, so
gray
that's just
dash lines.
No, not dash, it's solid gray line that.
Oh, okay. There's another 10-foot structure offset from the
Right.
karst easement. So the crosshatched area is the karst easement, and then there's another 10-foot offset from that to limit structures. So structures cannot be built within that additional offset from the karst.
And that's why I was thinking, and I just wanted to make sure I was correct, and that shouldn't have any issue with constructing the building and avoiding that area.
Correct, yeah. The building footprint is outside of the karst easement offset.
Okay, thank you. It's just, it's a busy diagram there, so.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Or
Quick comment, I really applaud this project and all the work you guys have put into it. I think, again, coming from the real estate industry and everybody throws around affordable housing and quantify that, what does that look like? And this is product to me that is not just creating inventory, which we desperately need, but creating it for the age group that, as you guys have shown very clearly, nobody's building for. So the other part to me is also the fact that you're going to be transplanting 55 and older individuals out of their own homes that right now don't want to move off a less than 4% rate like everybody else. So having firsthand experience in this a lot and seeing the struggles and the challenges, more projects like this, particularly for this group, age group, is excellent. So I appreciate what you guys put together here.
Any other comments or motion? Commissioner Stossberg.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo that and say that I generally appreciate the project. And I appreciate the addition of the community center, and it looks like there's like a little gazebo and maybe a pickleball court or something in there too. So I appreciate a little bit of recreation opportunity for the folks who are going to be living in this community. And I think that this addresses a need. And so thank you for proposing this kind of project. I also want to mention at the first hearing, there was a comment about all of these structures kind of like looking too much the same and then being too monotone. And I did notice in the packet you put some new colors on things, because you mentioned that, like, yeah, they won't all be like white and black or whatever. So I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to how many colors there might be out there, because that just can really add a lot of fun and pop to a community and make things unique. So thank you.
I'll make a statement, then I'll make a motion. I guess just, I echo the comments. I think this is a really intriguing project. I will also note that in my role here at the city, I'm also a little anxious about the parking-related things that are going to come to staff and various residents wanting to park always right in front of their place, and just knowing that will be a challenge. So I have some concerns with that, but there's just a lot of good things that I think are coming with this, and excited to see what happens, and also kind of curious as well. So I think with those minor hesitations and concerns, ultimately I make a motion to adopt the proposed findings and approve the primary plat for DP-44-24 with the 6 conditions. The first condition is modified from what's in our packet, and a new 6th condition regarding the ADA parking spaces being designed to be compliant with PROAG standards.
Is there a second? Any final comments before we call the roll?
Earlier, but on condition number 5, I think that we need a B between must and constructed, because the proposed cul-de-sac must be constructed of concrete. And that word is just missing. If we could
accept that
correct
as
that
a
typo.
friendly amendment?
Yes, I accept that friendly amendment.
Thanks.
And the second still stands. All right, any final comment then?
No final comment, just appreciating this is a really, also, I imagine, fun engineering project to figure out how to do.
All right, let's call the roll.
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Motion carries, and the petition is approved. We will now move on to our final petition of the evening. This is SP 47-24. And let's see. Jackie Scanlon is the case manager on this one. Take it away, Jackie.
Thank you. Okay. As stated, this is petition SP 4724. It is located at 3rd Street in between College and Walnut on the south side of the street. You can see located here in blue on the right, just south of the center of town. The property is a compilation of a number of lots. It is about 1.7 acres. It's zoned mixed-use downtown core in our downtown. It's zoned mixed-use downtown, and it's in our downtown core overlay with a comprehensive plan designation of downtown. As you can see in the aerial, the existing land use is a number of surface parking lots and an office building that is used as the election central during election season. The proposed land use is the UDO-defined use conference or convention center. So the petitioner is requesting to build a new portion of the convention center here, which will then be connected to the existing convention center to the west via skywalk over College Avenue. So again, there's some offices to the north, convention center to the west. The Bloomington Transit main transportation terminal is to the east across Walnut, and more offices to the south. So the petitioner is requesting a major site plan approval to allow for the convention center at this spot. Major site plan review is triggered because the UDO requires that developments that contain more than 20,000 square feet of new non-residential gross floor area receive major site plan review, and the new building at this location contains roughly 55,000 square feet. So the request is for essentially one building for a site plan. It's a two-story building, again, about 55,000 square feet. The main part of the building is a 30,000 square foot great hall, and then there's a loading dock in kind of back of the house area on the south side of the building, and then a few auxiliary meeting rooms on the second floor on the west and north sides of the building. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these site plan drawings, and we can talk about the development standards required by the UDO and how those are being addressed with this petition. The petitioner is requesting actually to be heard twice, to be heard at this meeting as well as the February 10th Plan Commission meeting. They will be going to the Board of Zoning Appeals later this month with a package of variances for this design. We will not discuss those in detail, as obviously we don't do that for Board of Zoning Appeals hearings in advance, and we have some Board of Zoning Appeals members on the Plan Commission, of course. So we are looking at the basic design here. Going through the staff report, one of the first requirements is to have building entrances. Pedestrian building entrances are required along each street. The way that they have decided to address that is by doing corner entrances, both at College and 3rd and Walnut and 3rd. I wanted to show a couple of site things that they are proposing to do as well. So here along College right now, there are a number of on-street parking spaces. The petitioner is looking to potentially, so you can kind of see them here in the aerial here. The petitioner is considering going to the Common Council to request to have the title amended so that those spaces be removed in that location so that they could have a wider sidewalk. In this drawing, they're also showing a sidewalk with curb that is linear along 3rd Street. They are in conversation with us about possibly allowing some sort of pull-off there for bus drop-off, which would require, which could potentially mean that they would not be able to meet the pedestrian and street tree requirements along 3rd Street. So we are still talking to them about that. Okay, as I mentioned, they are showing 2 main pedestrian entrances. The Unified Development Ordinance includes a number of design requirements to kind of bolster pedestrian entrances so that they're obvious to the people using the buildings. And so some of those things we have not seen rendered out yet. For example, benches, bike racks, planters, or public art at these locations. The building entrance has to be recessed 4 feet and requires lighting and address identification. And so those are the kinds of things that we will iron those out with the petitioner before the February hearing to get some more detail on those entrances. Another pedestrian connection, as I mentioned briefly before, is a skywalk that is planned to go, an enclosed structure, an enclosed walkway that is planned to go from the 2nd floor of the new building to the existing facility on the west side of College Avenue. And then vehicular entrance to the lot. There is no parking planned on this site. There's none required and there's none planned. The only vehicular use on the site will be, as I mentioned before, for the kind of loading back of the house area on the southwest portion of the building. They will be utilizing this driveway location here that's circled in blue to get to that part of the building. They will need variances for width and separation, and so they will be those will be part of what's going to Board of Zoning Appeals next week. So this is kind of the original or maybe not the original, but the filing drawing that we saw from the petitioner. So you may be able to tell that the two roadway design things that I mentioned earlier are different on this plan. So on the other plan, excuse me, they're still showing the parking along College and still showing the curb along Third because they don't have approval to change those at this time. But this is more in line with what they would like to do. So again, a larger sidewalk along College Avenue here, and then some sort of pull-off along 3rd Street here. You can see that these little squares denote street trees, and you can see that obviously having a pull-off here has an effect on where those can go. So again, those two changes, you may see something along those lines when you see this next month. Okay, so much of our downtown overlay design is architectural requirements. So the primary roof on this building is flat with a parapet, which is allowed. There are some window percentage requirements in this overlay, and because of the way that they have designed this kind of curtain wall, which you can kind of see in the, let's see here, the color rendering a little bit better, even though they're kind of small. The idea is that it's one large curtain wall on the second and first floors, because for most of the building, that is just actually one open space up through the second floor. So that is obviously not super traditional design, which this character overlay does require. So they will be requesting a variance for second-story window design, and then additionally, belt courses are something that we are talking to them about. So basically, architectural breaking up of the building, both vertically and horizontally, through the use of materials. And so we will be working with them on that before the February hearing. Articulation, as you've seen many a planner sit up here and say, like kind of the ins and outs of the building. This, because of the nature of this building, they are not planning that, and so they will be requesting variance from that as well. But otherwise, the material choices being used are allowed by code. And again, the primary facades on the northwest and east are going to be glass, the primary material of the facades. And then there will be a wall near the vehicular entrance on the south end to block the view of that area. So this is a zoom in of the north to kind of give you an idea. You can see this is all glass. All of the white squares and rectangles are glass. So there's no real material breaking this up no horizontal line of material that's different, which is something code calls for. They will be requesting a variance for how much of the building is along the property line on the Walnut Street side, but otherwise all other regulations related to setbacks and impervious surface coverage and height are met by the design, which is just under 50 feet tall, measured by the UDO. There are no environmental considerations. Obviously, you saw it was just a lot of parking lots. And so that is not something that we're dealing with heavily on this particular petition. Let's see, pedestrian and bicycle circulation was kind of a wonky section. So basically there are some street typologies in the transportation plan that dictate how the design should be on all three of the frontages. And obviously these are three really major roads for the city and especially downtown. So we are working with the petitioner. They are planning to meet some and not all. We are working with the petitioner to meet those transportation requirements of design. Additionally, the skywalk I mentioned, the petitioner is working with the engineering department because there's a requirement for how high the structure has to be, and so that is still being worked on and we are still discussing potential bus pull-off on 3rd Street. Bicycle parking is required, so 11 spaces. 6 of those can come from existing spaces on any of those frontages as long as they're within 50 feet of the primary building entrance. So we will work on that, as well as outdoor lighting and the minimal landscaping that comes along with the street tree requirement. So though you're not approving the interior of the building, I thought you might want to see, this is the first floor. So again, here in the southwest corner, back of the house, kitchen and service and storage corridors. the 30,000 square foot exhibit hall in the center with basically just like a large hallway around the outside for gathering and milling about when you get to a convention. And then this image is in concert with the existing convention center on the west side of College, and then this is the second floor. So as mentioned before, most of the building really is just an open first floor with a second floor above, but there is a mechanical corridor along the north end, a green roof at the northwest corner that you can go out on, and then 3 meeting spaces and a hallway here along the west side that then connects you to the walk over to get to the other building. So here are the renderings we've received thus far of the 3D structure of the building. So you can see here the existing convention center with the proposed skywalk. The skywalk is something that will go through, I believe, Board of Public Works because it's in the right-of-way. It's not something you will see. And then here is the planned wall to hide the kind of service area from College. And this is a view where the existing convention center is here, and so we are looking southeast, and so here's that kind of green roof that was mentioned, and then the pedestrian entrance on the corner. So the proposed site plan does meet many of the design requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, and will be, as I mentioned, appearing at the Board of Zoning Appeals next week to address a number of items. We will continue to work with the petitioner on the items that I mentioned here to bring the design in line with the UDO before it will come back to you at the February 10th, 2025 Plan Commission hearing if you are to vote that way tonight. And that is our recommendation, that you forward this petition to your February 10th, 2025 hearing. And I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to present?
Good evening. My name is Bill Riggert. I'm with Bledsoe Riggert Cooper James, civil engineer for the project. And with me tonight are quite a few people, those remaining here. And so with the Capital Improvement Board, we have President John Weichart and Vice President Doug Bruce, along with their project manager from J.S. Held, Mary Krupinski's here, and I think Deb Kuntz might be virtual. And then we have Deb Schmucker with Cornerstone. She's the landscape architect. And then here along with me are Sarah Hempstead and Eddie Layton with Schmidt Architects. And I think Lucy Gombert might be virtual. And then we also had David Grusel with Convergent Design, and he's kind of the expert on convention centers. I think Jackie's done a wonderful job presenting our proposed plan for the convention center, which has been long awaited. One thing I might comment on, she mentioned the green roof. Really, that's an outdoor plaza area that could be used by anybody that is at the convention for an event. We do, though, have a large green roof portion to try to meet 50% of CBU's new stormwater management for green infrastructure. I can answer any questions you may have on the civil engineering side of things, but the architects maybe can answer more about the building.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Okay. This is more of a city question. This is the Capital Improvements Board petitioning this. My question is, we're getting right on the convention center. We're building it to the east of the existing convention center. There's a property to the north that we've bought for X millions of dollars. And then there's a trail that we built with a lot of our money, 2 city blocks worth running behind this thing through a no man's land. Are we addressing that at all with this new convention center? Or are we just going to leave 2 blocks of trail through no man's land to parking? Is that the plan? Or is there some future phase that's going to happen?
I think that's a question for the designers for the CIB. It's not something that we, as the department, are involved in.
Wait, who's the question to then?
The petitioner, I would say.
Oh, I thought they were just doing this one thing. So, okay. Is there someone from the Capital Improvements Board that can address the actual convention center plan as a whole?
Well, Maybe John can talk to it, but are you talking about the old Bunger and Robertson property?
Well, that's one question, what's going on with that? And then two, there's a trail behind this. The rail trail goes behind the
Oh,
old
the
convention
Beeline
center.
Trail,
Through
yes.
2 city blocks of parking lot.
Yes.
We're allowing this to get expanded. What are we doing about the visual nature of that? Are we putting housing back there? What are we doing in that parking lot?
The Bunger Robertson property will hopefully become a hotel that will
Okay.
be part of the convention center complex, so to speak. So
Is that
will-
being worked on?
Yes, I believe we or the CIB has selected a hotelier to look into that project.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe John can.
Good evening, John Weichart, President of the CIB. The Bunger Robertson property is not part of the Capital Improvement Board parcels. It's owned by the Redevelopment Commission. We selected a hotelier, Dora Developers, and referred Dora Developers who are interested in the Bunger Robertson property to the city. And it's our understanding that conversations are ongoing right now between Dora as a hotel developer and the city administration or the redevelopment commission on whether or not that Bunger Robertson property will be used by the hotelier to develop the host hotel for the convention center. But that property is not part of the CIB's property. It's not part of the convention center property.
But you make recommendations to the redevelopment commission?
Pardon me?
You made a recommendation to the redevelopment commission and the city on who to use?
We made a recommendation to the city administration and to the redevelopment commission that Dora was the hotelier selected by the Capital Improvement Board.
Okay.
And that, but that the hotelier was not interested in properties under the domain, if you will, of the Capital Improvement Board. They were interested in a property that was owned by the city and the RDC.
Okay. Okay. And then what's going on behind? What's going along the trail? Anything?
Well, that's, again, the Beeline Trail and that, and the Beeline Trail property is not part of the expansion of the convention center. So it's not budgeted as part of the expansion. It's not a part of our expansion project.
So I guess I'll ask this back to the city out loud. Can we get a report on, is that just going to stay a parking lot with a trail through it for forever and ever? Is that the plan?
Yes,
Can we
we
ask
can-
that question to somebody?
I will ask someone to attend in February who can answer that question.
That'd be great. I'd like to understand it. Because, I mean, when the mall redevelops, we make them fix the parking lot. Just saying, I'm not sure what the difference is here. So, just a curiosity question. That's it.
Any other questions?
Oh, I can answer why they don't have to update that parking lot with this petition, if that's your question.
I know they're not gonna.
Well,
More of a curiosity as to what.
we could have somebody come in February who knows way more
Okay.
than I do. But in this particular case, because they're developing on the other side of the right-of-way only, they came to us with a number of, are we going to do this, are we going to do
They're
that?
connecting
So
with
if
the
they
Sky
were
Bridge, so-
developing,
But they're connecting,
yes.
so they are redeveloping the existing
They're
site.
not building, they're not doing new building on the west side, a new structure. So code only requires full compliance with a new structure, not with an addition.
So the catwalk's not a new structure?
No, because it's not standalone, it'll be attached to the existing structure.
Okay. Curious. Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Stossberg, go ahead.
Let me get back to where I was. This is a kind of comment for staff / question. In the downtown character overlay design part, under roof design, it says, it ends with, the parapet is recessed behind A. And it leaves us all wondering what it's recessed behind. So I guess I'm just kind of hoping that typo / didn't quite get finished sentence could be addressed for the
Yes.
February.
Oh, yes, there it is.
Yeah, there was just a thought there.
I
that-
will correct
yeah.
that for February.
Yeah, that would
Thank
be
you.
great, thank you. That's,
So we call it cliffhanger.
it was, I really want to know what it's recessed behind.
Any other questions? All right, we will then go to public comment. Again, if you're here in the chambers, just step up to the podium, state your name for the record. If you're online, click on reactions, click on raise hand, or send a chat message to Jackie Scanlon.
There's no one online except for, I think, all the people that Mr. Riggert mentioned and us.
All right, last call for public comment. All right, we're back to the commission then for any final comments or a motion. Flavia, go ahead.
Actually, it came to me now. So can you, Jackie, you said that this site does not require parking. So has there been any studies about the amount of people that are going to come here and where are they going to park? I mean, I know there's a parking structure across the street, and I know that there's some parking lots nearby, but is this going to cause traffic issues or, I mean?
Yeah, so I can confirm that the UDO doesn't have a minimum parking requirement for this use, so we cannot compel them to put parking on the site. In some ways, they are asking for this site and the site on the west to, they know that it will function as one, so parking will occur there. That's one of the things we're talking to them about, why they want the bus pull off on 3rd, because they're anticipating like bus traffic, and they would like to have them drop off as close to the new building as possible. But they may have looked into it more deeply than that. But yes, you're right, there's also a parking garage to the north that I don't know if there's a plan to, have some sort of contract there or not, but the petitioner may be able to answer that.
Was there a time that there was talks about attaching this building to the parking structure to the north, with a skywalk as well?
No. Well, I mean, there's a building in between. Juan Carlos Carsqual's building is there at the corner. So not with us. We haven't heard any discussion of that.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I'll just ask a question. Mentioned potential desire to widen the sidewalk on College and remove parking, but then also potential reduction of sidewalk where it's narrower on 3rd Street, just to understand the rationale with those two conflicting ideas. And I don't know if that's for the petitioner or just to walk us through why, if that's the case, if there is a desire to add more sidewalk where it's wide and less where it's narrow.
I start on maybe on 3rd Street where the bus pull-off would be. We'd maintain at least the 7 foot that's required by the urban topology, so we would meet that requirement. I believe on College, the idea is to try to draw the two sites closer together without a line of parked cars that would kind of break that interface between the two convention centers, and it would give more room for pedestrian space for people to gather, perhaps. And we're still evaluating whether or not we want to move forward with removing those parking spaces.
Okay.
Does that help?
That helps. I've got more thoughts, but I don't know if this is
okay.
the place for it.
Somewhat related question. I'm curious about the skywalk and construction of that. What are we expecting in terms of disruption of traffic during construction? Are we going to have to close the street down completely in order to construct that skywalk? Or is there a way that traffic can continue to go underneath that construction?
That's a good question, Brad. It's still in design, so there would be columns on either side of the street. And then it's a steel structure, so I don't know if they would bring it all in one piece or build it out and close like a lane at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So that would still be under
So I'm getting ahead of
discussion
myself, is
with
what
the
you're saying.
structural engineer. We could get I would imagine, form it all structurally, put in a decking, and then pour a concrete slab. So at least one lane would have to be shut down to do that portion of the construction, and it could be built up from there.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or a motion? Just a reminder, the recommendation is simply that we forward this petition to the February 10th hearing.
I think it'd be remiss not to acknowledge that the fact that Dave Askins of the B Square Bulletin is not here, and that Dave hung it up at the end of last year. I think this petition in particular garnered, first of all, I think the world of Dave, of what he brought to the table, of his journalistic integrity, and the full story he was able to present to the public. I love the fact that he was able to open to comments. John, I know you had commented and responded several times. I applaud the work and the dedication you guys have made. I know you've had to defend quite a few things in the decisions you made. I really wish the public, who was a litany of commentary through that whole thing, all the articles Dave wrote, would show up here and be able to voice a little bit more. I mean, obviously this is just passing it along, but sometimes I think it's, at least for me as a commissioner, we hear a lot in the community, but when push comes to shove, who shows up and who's here and who's able to take the comments that they can spit anywhere in social media and online and bring it to the people who are the actual decision makers. So I have a lot of respect for the people who show up like you and can present. So I would really, I guess, encourage the public to be more readily available as a part of this huge decision-making process. And with that, I will recommend that we move to forward this petition to the February 10th, 2025 Planning Commission hearing.
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Strasburg.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. We will see you back here in February. That is our final petition for the evening, so we are adjourned. Thank you.